Hello class, my name's Andrew Campbell and I have the pleasure of teaching you smartphone programming this term. I'm very excited to get to know you remotely, but hopefully when you're back on campus in person. These of course are uncertain times that we're living in right now, but all the sort of good energy and good feelings from here at Dartmouth College in Hanover. So I wanted to actually spend a short period of time telling you about the course in a nutshell, why it's so cool to actually want to understand how to program a mobile device today. If you think about your own daily life, your generation has embraced mobile technology like no other generation before you in a seamless way. You interact with a multitude of applications every day, from social media to communication styles of applications to fun, entertainment, whole variety, recreational style, sports applications, media, everything. You know, your life to some degree is contained in that small little device that you hold in your hands every day. Now, don't you think it'd be super cool if not only that you could actually use applications on the phone, but you could roll your own? By rolling your own, I mean build an application from its basic idea to a finished almost product. How do you do that? Wouldn't that be exciting to do? That take ideas that you have and actually turn them into reality in terms of technology and get them in the hands of potentially billions of users. So if you're interested in that idea, then this is the course for you. So let's get started. Today, over 3.5 billion people are using smartphones, which is about 45% of the world's population, which is amazing to think about it, right? That 45% of the world's population today has, you know, a device in their hands that is comparable to, you know, a top-end computer a few years ago. And smartphones have seeped into all sorts of different application areas that, you know, as I say, span sort of recreational entertainment styles applications all the way through to sort of mobile health. It's also pretty interesting from these stats that I just got before making this video, which is, you know, 4.7, 4.8 billion in the world actually use phones. Now, you're probably thinking, what is a phone? So, you know, I'm just going through in my office here at Dartmouth, I have a whole stack of phones. And if I sort of could find one of the early phones that I used, here you go, class. That's a beauty, isn't it? It's actually, that is quite a flash phone for the early days of mobile sensing. It's sort of miniaturized, but, you know, look at it. There's no touch screen on this phone. There's no internet connectivity. Well, actually, the internet was around at that time. But these other phones that people use that aren't smartphones are typically called feature phones. And here's a few early feature phones. Probably one of the earliest devices I used as a researcher was not a phone, but looks like it. And this is a compact. Then there was this really cool device from Nokia, which is a Linux phone. And out of interest, class, all the iPhones and all the Android phones on the planet are built on Linux. And this is the first Android phone that I used. So those are some sort of, and here of course is the beautiful phone, my Pixel 4 that I'm using, and I'll show you in this class. So a lot of people on the planet use mobile applications, but not many of them actually have the ability to actually produce apps. And that's what this class is really about. So the core of this class really is writing a lot of code. I'm a great believer in hands-on, practical code writing. You may not write beautiful code at the beginning of the class. Maybe you might not write beautiful code at the end of the class, but you're going to write a lot of it. And by trial and error, essentially, you're going to become, I think, confident Android programmers. You might ask, why Android and not iOS? Why Android and not Apple? Why Google and not Apple? Couple of interesting factoids. Here at Dartmouth, about 80% of the kids have iPhones, and 20% of the kids have Android phones. But if you look at the global population of phone usage, it flips around. So 80% of the world, 80% of that 3.5 billion phones are Android phones, and only 20% of them are Apple phones. So by learning to program Android phones, you literally can get your ideas into the hands of 80% of the world's population. The other reason is, class, well, take a look at the color of this beautiful little Android. Go big green, right? So back to the sort of core part of the course. The core part of the course is the development of an application called MyRuns, and it's a recreational sports application. It's not simplistic and it's not overtly complex, but it does touch on every aspect of how you would build the mobile client side of an application. Also, very coolly, the cloud side. In the Android world, that's called Google Firebase. So we're going to combine and we're going to understand both mobile phone application on the device itself and also programming in the cloud. And I'll talk a little bit about that as we get into the course. But I want to stop right now and just bring up the application to show you what you will build sequentially over the first 6 weeks of the course. And typically students will be programming that by themselves if we were here at Dartmouth. But because of the situation that we're in today and the fact that I know that you're maybe sitting at home in your bedroom, watching this video, feeling a little isolated, I decided to allow you to pair code with any other student in the class. So the idea there is that you can exchange ideas, you can show each other's code, but ultimately you have to submit your own code. But you can share and talk to people, and I think that will be very helpful. Okay, so let's get to it. Let's look at the actual application itself. Okay, let me tell you a little bit about MyRuns, just to walk you through the app so we can talk a little bit more about it. I'm going to show you the app running on my beautiful Pixel 4. So if I bring up the application, like many apps, you register with the application and then you sign in. You are writing all of this code, right? All of the things that I'm showing you, you're going to be writing. So, you know, I've previously used this application. Here's my email. There's my fantastic password. I sign into the application and I come to an activity page. You can think about this as a page or a view. I can actually, this is a recreational application that captures activity. If I want to go for a walk, I want to go for a run, I want to go on my bicycle, not swimming, not with your phone yet, but I want to record my exercises. I can do that manually, which is a bit laborious. I could do that with just using GPS, which it can, my phone knows where I am, so it can actually put my runs or my walks or my cycle rides directly on my map. And I'd have to say, with GPS, am I going for a run? Am I going for a walk? You know, I'm going cycling. Or I could say automatic, which would use GPS and the phone would decide what the activity was. The phone itself would know if I'm cycling, I'm walking, I'm running. It's smart, it can do it. So that's automatic. So I click start and you can see I'm right in the middle of my office in Sudikoff, and I'm not going to go for a run right now, class. So that, and I could save this, and of course, I'm just standing here. And you can see at the bottom, there's a start tab, there's a history tab. I go to history, I look at all my exercises. I could pull up the one that I just put in, or I could pull up a more interesting one here. I ran the second one listed down. I ran yesterday, 9 kilometers. Class, it's great to get out there and do exercise. It helps with stress. It helps with the situation we're in. We'll talk about running and we'll talk about exercise. So I can click on that one, and what it brings up is the actual run I did yesterday. And the cool thing about this is just overlays it on Google Maps. But you can see I started out where? Just next to Sushiya, and I went for a run along Rip Road. Where else did I go? Along Rip Road, down to the Hanover Country Club, back into town, around Ockham Pond. There's a lot of people walking around Ockham Pond right now. Social distancing as well. and then back to where I started. So you can see there's a start and an end tab, and there's all the details of the run there. On the top right-hand corner, you can see, well, it might be obscured by my talking tab, but I could delete, I thought I could delete this exercise or just go back to the main page. So that gives you a little idea of what my runs can do. And so let's get under the hood a little bit more about my runs. So you can see from building an application that I just demonstrated like that, it touches on a lot of plumbing, components in the application framework. And if we wanted to talk a little bit about what is under the hood, the code that's under the hood really for that application comprises, at a very high level class, without going into specific details, UI design and implementation. So a lot of those screens and that layout you'll be doing and building those. Has a lot of plumbing, Android plumbing, to do with things like activities, fragments, life cycles, services, communications between components. Importantly, all of those exercises are stored locally on your phone, directly on your phone, on a database, a SQLite database. So we'll build an application that creates a database on your phone that you can store your exercise or your objects in, right? And of course, you know, that application uses a lot of really cool things that you use every day. For example, we use Google Maps. We overlay our exercises onto Google Maps, and we use GPS to get our location. And we also use a component called activity recognition, where the phone actually determines what the user is doing, walking, standing, sitting, running. And we use all of those, which is basically a machine learning idea. We use all of those inside our application and interact with those sort of services. And finally, the component that's sort of hidden here is we use the Firebase cloud. So we'll write code that actually stores all of our data on the cloud. A really cool part of this class, and probably the main reason to do it, I think, and the way that I perceive this, is the first 6 weeks really are an Android bootcamp where you gain a lot of insights and skills and write a lot of code and write a lot of buggy code, but you develop skills. And then you take your own ideas and work with one or two members of the class and build something that's all yours. So you take your idea or your collective idea with your co-workers here, in a sense, the students that are working in your group, and you roll out that idea. So you design the application, you use a lot of the components that you've learned to use in the class, but you extend those ideas. For example, every year I'm amazed at how the cloud has become a big part of apps that students build. So the cloud isn't just used to store and provide computation, but it also provides machine learning, where you can do predictive analytics. You, for example, could take a picture in your application and the cloud could recognize objects in that application, in that picture, or in that video. And that could be a component of your application. So without actually having to understand machine learning or object recognition, you can use toolkits, pardon me, and other different applications in the cloud to really hone your application and produce something really beautiful. And also remember that Android doesn't just run on these things, right? Phones. Android doesn't just run on these things, but Android runs on these things, and Android runs on TVs and cars, right? So the ideas that you learn in this class really translate to beyond the phone. Okay, some fun facts about me, class. Let's see. I sound very English, don't I? You know, it's not a famous saying, but there's a saying about an English accent, right? An English accent, you sound intelligent and arrogant at the same time. Well, I'll leave that to, we can discuss that in more detail in the class, right? If you're interested. But here's the fun fact. I have no English blood running in my veins. I'm sort of proud of that. I'll explain why in the class. Another fun fact about me is I spent a year working in the Android group, 2016, actually almost through 2017, and then worked at a Google startup called Verily Life Sciences, looking at mobile health. So I can tell you a few stories about my experiences working in the Android group, which was a very positive experience. It was great to go back into industry after almost 30 years. I spent my early career in the software industry and see what's happening today. And I bring those ideas back here to Dartmouth and to this class, I think. I'm a huge fan of English Premier League, and particularly Tottenham Hotspur. So if you are an Arsenal fan, you know what grade you're going to be getting already, right? Two of the fun facts about me is, first fun fact is I actually left school at 16. And a really proud fun fact is that I'm actually a first generation student and therefore a first generation professor. So that's a little bit about me. I hope to get to know you a little bit better in the class, initially remotely, and then hopefully when we get through this period class, and we will, here in my office or on the green or anywhere else. So cheers.